Can everyone hear me?
Amen.
Hope this mic can't pick up my stomach growling. It's been a very early morning. Okay, so I had Parashat Vayigash, which is Genesis 44 and 31 through 45 and 7. Or my portion was 44 and 31 through 45 and 7. And it mainly goes over the brothers coming and meeting Joseph, and my portion specifically is Joseph's reconciliation with the brothers. And I decided to kind of go the route of doing like a character study between Joseph and Judah, because they're basically like the main characters of this small little portion. Now with Joseph, I think one of Joseph's greatest virtues is his forgiveness, because he was a very strong man, much stronger than I. Well, I'll give him that in my next few seconds. But I think, starting as context for this, one of the earliest struggles in the Bible seems to be the maintaining of brotherhood. Because way back in the first chapters of Genesis, we see the first struggles between Cain and Abel, asking, am I my brother's keeper? And we see with the patriarchs that continues. We see the issues between Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, and Joseph and his 12 brothers. And we keep seeing this continue down throughout the Bible. It really just seems like maintaining brotherhood is like just one of the hardest things to do. And even nowadays with modern churches, it's really hard to keep churches together too. There's splits all over. It just seems that maintaining peace within the brotherhood is just a very long-lasting struggle, and it's definitely something that's been, I don't know, the enemy has definitely been strong with that one throughout the years, because it's been a very hard struggle. Joseph's forgiveness is extremely admirable and something we should strive to match. But on top of that, it takes a genuine apology and reflection on one's actions to deserve forgiveness. So that kind of goes to Joseph and Judah. You can have a lot of forgiveness, but you also have to work to earn someone's forgiveness. So going back to Joseph, I think his outlook on life was very God-centric, and that's kind of what helped his forgiveness go so far. Rather than looking at his situation in spite, Joseph's always had complete trust in God. He was sold away from his family into slavery, falsely charged and thrown into prison, and then was forgotten in that same prison for years. And he still found it in his heart to forgive everyone who did him wrong. And yet, nowadays, we're still ready to fight about people cutting us off in traffic and insulting our favorite football teams. Like I said, he's a very strong man. And then Genesis 45 and 5 says, now do not be distressed or reproach yourselves, or Joseph says, now do not be distressed or reproach yourselves, because you sold me hither. It was to save life that God sent me ahead of you. And not only was he able to forgive these people, he was able to justify it by saying, hey, it was God's plan anyways. But why are you feeling bad? That's a very strong mindset, because if all this stuff happened to any of us, I don't think any of us could try and forgive someone, no matter how sorry they were. Like, I'm not forgiving you. You sold me away. I get thrown into prison. My life's been hard since you guys left me. But he was like, no, God wanted this to happen. I forgive you. Don't blame yourselves. This is all part of his plan. Now, when something like this, or when something happens to us, rather than curse God, we need to be able to stand strong in faith, like Job and Joseph, and trust that God has a plan for us. Because just like Job, throughout Joseph's entire course of going through Egypt, he never cursed God, never blamed him, never took anything out on him. He was, hey, I'm trusting in you. Yeah. Whatever you want. Now, with Judah, I think this portion really makes him a very interesting character. We don't really give him credit where credit's due, especially with this reconciliation between him and Joseph. Now, when Benjamin was accused of stealing the cup, Judah was the one who stepped up and offered himself in Benjamin's place. Now, reading this, you might think, oh, Judah was probably like the oldest. No, he was the fourth oldest. You would think the oldest brother would step up and be like, no, let me take his place. No, it was fourth down the line, and Judah stepped up. He was behind Reuben, Simeon, and Levi. none of them were quick to offer up, like, no, you can take us, let Benjamin go home. I'm sure deep down in their hearts, they might not have noticed it, but they still kind of held some of that hatred. Just like that stemmed back from so far. A lot of that still plagued their heart. And I think Judah was the only one who, throughout the years, even though they didn't know this was Joseph yet, Judah was the only one who had the growth and empathy to realize why he needed to take Benjamin's place. Now, while Judah was the one who suggested keeping Joseph alive, he was also still heavily involved in the plot. Even though he wanted to keep him alive, that doesn't absolve him from letting them be so mean to Joseph. And he was also the one who presented the bloody coat to Jacob. So, although he tried to be a little bit easier on Joseph, you could say he almost played the worst part in breaking the news to his father, giving him that bold-faced lie with the fake evidence. He might have, he tried to make it seem a little bit better, but Judah had just as much, if not worse, of a role in this than any of his other brothers. So again, why did Judah step up? Now, a little bit after Joseph was sold off into slavery, we hear about Judah's sons. Judah didn't know the pain of losing a child, and he was the one who had his father believe that his youngest, most loved child was dead. Now, Judah was fine with letting his father sit with this grief because he didn't understand the pain of losing a child. He didn't really know how much this really hit his father. He told him the news and was like, I mean, it's whatever. It's one less problem for me. And he basically went about his life, forgot about it. And like I said, after selling Joseph off, Judah had his two sons. And the more important part, he ended up having to bury both of those two sons. Now, at first, this might seem like God showing revenge, or showing Judah an eye for an eye. You made your father think his son was dead, now I'm going to kill your sons. But I think that's a little too arbitrary. You got to look a little bit deeper than just the revenge. Now, with Judah's sons dying, this was the only way he could understand the pain he put his father through. Judah's loss was the catalyst for his spiritual growth, and the reason he was able to step up and take Benjamin's place, as he realized what he'd be putting his father through if he lost another of his youngest and most loved sons. Judah's growth is to be shown even more impressive when you realize he offered to take the place of his father's youngest, Benjamin, his father's youngest and most loved. The exact same criteria that Joseph fit many years before. And it shows he's really coming 180, going from hating Joseph so much to wanting to sell him off, to being able to stand up for his younger brother who was in that same position. An older Judah would have been like, hey, at least it's not me. But we see he came full circle, and the empathy he's able to feel for his father now is the reason he's able to step up and be like, man, I know my dad loves this kid a lot more than me, but I don't want to have to put him through that pain. And so his empathy was a lot stronger than his hate. And it's really impressive growth from Judah. Yeah. And we see Judah's growth was really moved Joseph's heart, because he really could have kept Benjamin. They could have went back home, had to deal with explaining to their father how they lost another one of the youngest sons. And that would not have been a fun conversation. But Judah's growth was able to move Joseph's heart and saved him from all that trouble and made Joseph break down into tears. So that was why he was so willing to forgive them, because he saw, wow, they're not the same people who sold me off into slavery. They've really reflected on their actions and really thought about what was wrong. And I think it's just really impressive that Judah was able to realize that he needed to put his hate aside and be able to save his father from a grief so intense that it could kill him. Now, tying together both Joseph and Judah's growths, we see Joseph going from being a spoiled kid to the second most powerful man in Egypt. And through all his hardships, he was always able to find it in his heart to forgive and trust God. And we see Judah going from being an angry and spiteful brother to going through so much growth, he was able to become the most understanding and most empathetic of all of his brothers. And again, he's still not even the oldest. We see he was able to go from being stubborn, angry, to being able to humble himself so much that he's able to offer up himself in front of Benjamin. really just pinning himself, or basically prostrating himself, knowing like, hey, you got to do what you got to do sometimes. And through both of their journeys, though tragedy struck plenty, God tied their journeys back together and showed just how important everything that happened to them both individually was. No matter how bad Joseph's life seemed getting thrown to prison, Judah's life seemed having the sons die, again, it tied back into being part of God's plan and showing just how important and how intricate he really is, how far ahead he plans this. It might seem like life's the worst it could be, but ties it all back together. And Joseph was able to save everyone. Judah was able to reconcile with his brother, which I'm sure felt like the greatest sin in his life. I'm sure he carried that guilt with him forever. And he was finally able to rid himself of that. Now, in conclusion, though, of the story, through this story of both the victim and the perpetrator, we can learn from both sides of the coin. On Joseph's end, forgiveness should always be on the forefront of our mind, and we should have complete faith that everything that has happened to us is happening according to God's plan. And going off that forgiveness, we see in Romans 12:19, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, 'It is mine to avenge, I will repay,' says the Lord." So we really have no reason to be angry with anyone. Just live, let live, forgive. Anything that's happened to you, God will pay back whoever did it to you. You just have to have complete faith. And going on the other side of that coin, with Judah's side, we should always be ready to humble ourselves, and we should always try our best to empathize with those we hurt in order to keep learning from our mistakes and to embody the love that we should be known by. And that's all I've got today.